Hey everybody, Ryan here from Music City Live. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode 15. I'm here with Deb Hutchins. Deb, thank you so much for coming on. Deb is a touring live sound engineer, production manager, tour manager, and world global traveler of sorts. Tell me about, because you just mentioned this before we started, tell me about sort of your perception on the differences between tour live sound engineering versus tour managing versus both, because I've seen people wear both hats, versus production managing. What is the difference between all three?
So for sure. So I went to Fanshawe College for studio and to record albums for music, but what really I connected with was live sound. So that's going to concerts. So I do what's called front of house sound. So if you're an audience member and you go to a concert, the sound you're hearing in the speakers, it would be something that I would mix. And then also I do monitoring on stage for the band. So sometimes when you're seeing a band play live, they'll have in-ear monitors, like little custom in-ear molds they're wearing, that has what we call a monitor mix, so they can hear certain instruments or their voice differently than other musicians on stage. And there would be normally a separate mixing console side stage, so I mix that as well. And that's called a monitor technician position. So those are operating for audio for live sound in the industry. And then the production managing is kind of the coordination of the technical aspects of everything. So that includes a production schedule, what time the band's loading in, what equipment do we need for backline, lighting, sound, video, kind of how the whole day is going to come together. And then tour managing is taking an artist and looking after the non-technical aspects of their performances they do, their engagements and concerts. So it's booking hotels, flights, coordinating the guest list, making sure if they have any media appearances, TV and stuff like that, that they get there on time.
No big deal.
All those things. It's like being a mom, basically. So and all those things, especially when you're working with a breaking artist or an artist that's doing well successfully, their days are scheduled down to the minute. They're up in the morning and they've got morning radio promo, and then maybe they've got another interview, and then they've got a meeting with a record company, and then they're back to the venue for sound check, and then they're having dinner and getting ready for the performance. So their days are pretty busy, and you need a team around them to coordinate them and assist them.
Are you in a situation with some of the acts that you've worked with where you've had to wear multiple hats, like do front of house and try to tour manage?
Absolutely. I do that quite a lot. I usually have multiple roles that I do. So I'll do front of house and tour managing is a pretty standard Canadian technician position, which many of us ask why we're doing both, because there are two different jobs, the technical aspect and then the coordination. But the way I look at it sometimes, especially when I'm doing production managing, is the more organized you are, the better it helps you on show day, right? So if everyone knows what's going on and you've got your homework done, and reached out to the venue and sent them an itinerary sheet. This is what's going on for crew and labor and equipment. Then when you get there, you just kind of have fun. And that's the goal, really, is to make the day smoother. And when the bands see that the crew are calm and things are being done and they're laughing and joking around, they're more relaxed, so they have a better performance for the audience. So it's better to do that. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of now some bands are asking me to do monitors from front of house as well. So where I talked earlier, you have a separate monitor position. Some bands now, and especially with digital audio, we'll be talking about this, I'm sure the technology has really changed where bands can buy their own, X32 rack system and do their own in-ear monitors on their cell phones. So a lot more artists are doing that now, or asking me to do monitors from front of house. And then when you do monitors, you're into wireless coordination anytime that has a wireless frequency, whether it's a microphone or in-ears. And that all needs to be coordinated properly and looked after. So that becomes part of the job as well. And then I set up backline and set up drums and help set up guitars and drive the band and pack the truck. So it's, I do all the things.
And that's the part that most people don't see, right? Like that's the part that, people show up at the show, everything's done, stage looks on, background music playing. They didn't see all the chaos that, like you said, starts at, 6 in the morning or 8 in the morning, plane call, bus call, whatever it is. And then, interviews and rushing around and figuring it all out and getting to the venue and realizing that the channels on the console don't work or whatever it is. Like there's so many pieces to that, right? So, I really applaud you and everyone else in Canada and around the world who wears both of those hats, because they really, truly are two full-time jobs. Because I've seen people do both, and I've seen them done separately, and especially at the higher level when the artists are really big, you need a separate tour manager. You really do. I mean, sometimes it's everything that person can do to just keep the artists where they need to be when they need to be there. Like that is literally its own full-time job, depending on the personality of the artist. So that's cool. So you've worked with a short list of people and through your career, just to name a few: Juno and Grammy award-winning artists Sloan, B&L, Bare Naked Ladies. Shout out to Bungie, who's not here today. Who's a London guitarist guy. Serena, Ryder, Jimmy Rankin, Leahy. I love Leahy, by the way. I met one of the girls from Leahy's daughter the other day. It was random. Matt Dusk, Jann Arden, Dan Hill, Talk, which we'll get into a little bit about them, the Next Generation Leahy, and David Wilcox. And we almost worked together last year with Wilcox at Kellogg's here in town, but Tony Crea filled in for you because you were out with Talk.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk. So what's going on with them? It sounds like they're doing really, really well.
Yeah, they're a new band. They started in Ottawa, Ontario. Now they're based in Toronto. And it's the same management as Serena, Ryder. So I had been working with Serena, Ryder in 2019, 2020, during the pandemic. Of course, everything changed. And then their management said, can you come out and mix this young band called Talk? And I said, sure. And I mixed them for the first time and thought they were fantastic and met the guys and they were really great. And we did a few more shows. They had a showcase at the Troubadour in LA and flew me down to mix that. It was their first U.S. show, first show in L.A. with a record company there, so that was a big deal.
What a great first show at the Troubadour. That's so cool.
So they were a great band, and they're young guys, but fantastic musicians. And then they had their New York City debut showcase at the Mercury Lounge and flew me down for that. And again, it just worked out really well. And then management said, would you be interested in coming on and, for some other tours we have last year? So Talk opened for a band called Young the Giant last summer in the States on an amphitheater tour. And opening act gigs is basically the best you could ever have of any touring scenario because you don't have to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning to load everything in. You can show up around 3 o'clock. And, have a smaller amount of equipment and come into a PA system that's already been tuned by another team. And I just set up my small little, setup for the band on our own little console, mix it, and then go to catering. And it's the greatest thing. So we had a great summer working with them. They had a fantastic crew and were wonderful to us. Their production manager, Drew DeStefano, actually, we were so impressed with him, invited him to be our tour manager on the past tour of the U.S. leg we just did in February, March. So we made some really good connections on that. And then they started doing larger festivals. Last summer, we did Boston Calling, Life is Beautiful in Las Vegas. We did the Eddie Vedder Festival in California, Hannah Festival. Fun. And then they toured Europe in September. We played Germany, England, France, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden. So we did quite a bit of touring, played Amsterdam on the guitar player's birthday, which was fantastic. Wow, and then, so they've just been doing really well. They just won a Juno. So we had done our U.S. club tour in February, March. They played the Junos, performed at the Junos in 2024 in Halifax, won a Juno, and then just finished our Canadian tour. And we're just getting ready to start into summer festival season. So fantastic show. If you ever had a chance to catch them live.
I have not had a chance to catch them live. No, I definitely will. Now, that's the sales pitch right there, I tell you. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely come check them out. Are they playing anytime around here?
We're doing a lot of shows in Quebec. They actually broke in Quebec, and they have a lot of fans out there. We're doing Osheaga Festival in Montreal this summer.
Oh, that's fun.
I think in Ontario, we got the Ottawa Blues Festival that we're doing. That'll be a really great night. So I don't know if they're playing London right now, but I'm sure they'll be back in the circuits.
We'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
I know people.
Yeah.
That's cool. And Wilcox, you're still doing David? Yeah?
Yeah, I've been, so David Wilcox is a Canadian. David Wilcox is an American one as well. And I work with a Canadian.
This is a good thing to clarify.
Yeah, the Canadian David Wilcox. And I've been mixing front of house and tour managing David for 17 years. And he is a phenomenal guitar player, as everybody knows, and just a beloved musician in Canada, but also an incredibly wonderful human being as well, which is, I think, part of why the relationship has worked so well. And it's truly an honor and pleasure to work with him. He's just a fantastic musician. So,
when did you start mixing for him?
17 years ago. So, wow. Boy, that's a math question. Yes, whatever year that was, 17 years ago.
I worked with him. I didn't even know who he was because I was a kid, right? When some of his music was like literally a kid, when some of his music was hitting. And so I worked with him in the 90s, not really knowing who he was. But my dad had bought the album, the full CD. And I was DJing at the time at my dad's bar in town. And it was one of the CDs that I would put on kind of, while we were getting the bar ready and stuff. And so I kind of knew some of the songs. And then the first couple times I worked with him in Harris Park and did lights for the show, I was just in love with the songs. Like, it was just so, because and his facial expressions and all the stuff that he does on stage, right? He's so into it. And I remember that. I was like, wow, because there was only a handful of people at the time that I was working with in the 90s that were that into it, And he came out and he was so animated. And I'll never forget, there was like the old gondola stage in Harris Park, and he was just out front with his guitar, just his face was all crazy, and he was just so into it. And it was, it was an amazing experience for me. That was either the first or second time I worked with him. But it's always a pleasure to work with them. And I hadn't done lights for a long time. And that one show that we just did at Kellogg's was like the first time I'd done lights in like a couple of years. But it was fun. It was super fun. It took me right back to those days in the 90s. So that's cool that you've been with them for 17 years. That's quite the trip. And what's the Next Generation Leahy? What is that? Because I just finished saying I like Leahy, but what is that? What's the connection there?
Yeah, so Leahy's a family from Lakefield, Ontario, and I think there's 13 brothers and sisters, and then I toured with Leahy, and Leahy themselves are the children of the parents of Leahy who they toured as well. And they did the music circuit as well. So the Leahy that I know, they toured all over Canada and the U.S. quite a lot. And then Doug Leahy is one of those members, started with his family now, which they've called the Next Generation Leahy. Okay. And so his children are in the show as well. And it's been great because every time I mix the show, it's changing. And now they're like, oh, this child has now picked up a new instrument. Oh, we need another wireless channel for an accordion mic. And it's like this person now is playing drums and this person's now coming in and playing guitar. And the children are learning so many instruments so fast that the show changes all the time. It's actually a sound engineer's nightmare working with them. But I love it. It's a very dynamic show to mix, and the children are so talented. And they've grown up with music their whole lives, so they sound so tight as young musicians because this is what they do when they're home. They play together all the time. It's like part of their life. So it's great to work with them. But there's always things that are changing and different musicians and picking up different instruments and learning. So the show is very fluid, really, really dynamic. And they're going through different stages of where their influencers are coming from music. So different songs come out and they're writing new material themselves all the time and getting inspired by different things. So it's a really, really creative camp to be involved in.
Yeah, there must be something in the genes there for sure. Because I didn't even realize it was three generations. I thought it was just the two. So that's really interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and look that up now. So early beginnings for you. What got you into music, and what got you into wanting to go down this sort of sound mixing front of house path?
That's a great question. Like, where did the spark start? So our family, I was born in London, England. So we're like landed immigrants over here. But even when I was a young child and 7 or 8 years old, I remember listening to British radio and really just loving some of the songs, And when we came to Canada, I had trouble making friends. I was like this geeky kid, I was like the weird kid from a different country. And I found so much connection in music. Somebody would sing about feeling lonely or feeling lost. I'm like, oh, they're writing about me. That's a song about me. And Patrick Duffy, one of your guests, talked about that. People connecting with the music. It's like that song is about me, And I started to really get into the music. And during my angry teenage years, I would listen to the radio in my bedroom, and just find that connection. And I was about, 15, 16 years old, where a British band called Duran Duran came out. So I was right in the demographic.
Little band that no one knows about, yeah.
And started to really get into them and their music. And then as I was evolving through my early teenage years, I got into a radio show called Dr. Demento, which was a DJ from the States. And he had all these kind of novelty and kind of more like eclectic music. And I kind of got into that. And then I was hanging around some punk rock kids in high school and got into punk rock music. So I was getting into like Forgotten Rebels and Sex Pistols and different bands like that of different harder music. And Forgotten Rebels actually from Hamilton, which I ended up moving to years later. And then I got into another British band called Depeche Mode. and who were really, really popular at the time. And some friends of ours, all in that high school group, were super fans. And we would like skip school to go line up for concert tickets. This is back before the internet.
Yeah.
And we would get our sleeping bags and sleep outside the, the ticket outlet office, and there'd be fans there, and we'd all be playing music on our ghetto blasters. And, you get your tickets and then you go to the show. And that moment, I saw Depeche Mode play at the C&E grandstands in Toronto. And I was that moment where the lights went out at the stadium and everybody starts screaming and yelling, and the limos were coming into the stage. And then a few minutes later, the band is on stage and they're playing songs that you've listened to over and over again, records that have changed your life and made you, happy to be alive. And now they're playing here. And that moment for me, it was like getting goosebumps. And I was just, that for me just made it such a connection. And during the changeover in between like the opening act and Depeche Mode, I'd see all the crew moving this equipment around. And I thought, man, these guys make the show happen. These guys actually travel with the band. And at the time, I thought it'd be really glamorous to travel with bands. I've since learned that it's not always the case. But that's where the spark came from. And then at the end of the show, everybody, the audience would all be leaving the venue, and I would sit there in my seat watching this equipment being moved around. And I just thought, man, that's got to be an amazing job. And then ushers finally came in, sorry, you've got to go, and it's time to go. And then Depeche Mode had came out with 2 documentaries at the time. One was called Route 66, and there was another one that came out, and I forgot the name of that one. But in that, they had a split-second shot of a female lighting operator calling the follow spot cues for the show. And that for me was this spark of like, oh, like there's a woman doing this technical role and working with the band. Maybe that could be something that I could do. So that's where the spark started.
Did you ever find out what her name was?
I should check it out. Actually, I should Google that and find out.
That's cool.
So, and what it did is it showed me the possibility that there was a path there, that there was an opportunity. And that's kind of when I really went, this is what I really want to do.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it'd be cool to find out who she was if she's still alive,
Yeah.
And she inspired you, and then you went on to work with all kinds of other people and teach and inspire other people. That would freak her right out.
Yeah, it's amazing. And she wouldn't have even known, right?
No.
Because I would have just seen her in the documentary. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I should check that out. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you went to Fanshawe, right? Mm-hmm. How did that happen? Like, what was that all about?
So my parents had the time, again, in my end of high school, wanting me to go to school to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever parents want their kids to do, normal things. And but I had said, I really want to try this music and give it a shot. And then at my high school guidance counselor office, they had a pamphlet there for the Music Industry Arts program. And it was a 2-year program. And I thought, well, this is what I want to do is music, but then I'll have a college diploma. So my parents are kind of happy, or at least slightly less frustrated with me. And but I didn't get in my first year. At the first year at MIA, they only took 33 engineering students and 33 production, which is 66 students total, and they were getting over 800 applications. So it's really hard to get in. So I didn't get in my first year, had to go back to high school for like the worst year of my life, upgraded everything, and then I apprenticed at Phase 1 Recording Studios to get apprenticeship to get into Fanshawe. And then I took a live sound course at Humber College, a part-time course, and that was taught by a lady called Kitty Cross. And she was the first female touring rock and roll live sound engineer that I ever met. And that was really huge to see somebody doing the gig that I wanted to do. And I was like, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. So that was a huge influence on me. And then I got into Fanshawe my second year. So I was really glad for that experience. I finally got in. So
sweet. And that would have been when was that? Was that early 90s?
91, yeah.
91?
I graduated 93, yeah.
Yeah, so that would have been different back then than now. Like, and Dan you watched the Dan episode, like we sort of talked about that, as things in that course have changed dramatically in terms of like what you have to submit and just everything, right? Mm-hmm. So you would have been sort of back when did you have to submit a musical work back then? How did that work?
I did. The first year was they only accepted people for their musical ability. They had to be a musician basically to get in. The second year they had changed it. You could submit an engineering song as well. So I took piano lessons. I was terrible. But I managed to string together some kind of musical performance, I guess. We used a lot of studio magic, but I did perform it. And then I took a band I was working with at Sam the Record Man, a record company in Bramley City Center at the time. And a friend of mine worked there, had a band called The Coles. And so I brought them into my recording studio at Phase One Studios that I was just volunteering at. And we recorded live off the floor on a 1/4-inch tape. And I submitted that on a cassette to MIA and finally got in. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you mentioned a few people already, but was there anyone else that inspired you?
I think those were like the kind of the spark point of like showing me the possibility. But then when I started to get involved and do more shows, certainly people like Robin Billington and John Sulak, who work with the Bare Naked Ladies, are huge influences on me. Oh, wow. Gary Stokes, who mixed Sarah McLachlan for years, Mark Vreeken, who mixed the Tragically Hip. And I would count all those folks as not only they were really good at their job, like technical skill set, but just really good people. They never yelled and screamed and swore at people. They were always really calm. And just, I kind of grew up going, I want to be like that. You know, I want to hold myself to a high standard and you know, and try to focus on excellence just like they do every day.
It's interesting that you thought that at that time too, because I think that obviously speaks to the kind of person you are and your character, but I mean, I grew up surrounded by some interesting characters that I won't mention. And, you know, and there was lots of yelling and screaming and chaos. But I think, you know, there's some, you know, and I wasn't alive in the 70s, but there's people that told me that was sort of born out of different eras, right? Like different times in rock and roll where, you know, where sometimes the sort of the attitude of the artists, you know, rubbed off on the crew, and then the crew ends up getting this sort of developing this conscience of, you know, we're the best, and this has got to be perfect, and if it's not, this is how I react. And so it's interesting that you sort of gravitated towards that more, you know, calm, collected, cool, you know, because ultimately, that's the stay power. Like, that's how you last in this industry. I mean, I know that now. I didn't know that at the time when I was a teenager and there's these, you know, people freaking out all around me. But yeah, that's how you know, and a lot of artists, when I do speeches and stuff, or people ask me, they're like, you know, how do I have a career? And it's like, well, you got to be nice to people. You know, you have to have a good team and have everything, like you said, well prepared, well planned. And that helps obviously with not having as many stressful moments, but yeah, that's definitely a big thing. So it's good that, you know, you sort of gravitated towards those types of people for your influence, because, it's the way to go. Because I've seen the people, ironically, who weren't that way. Most of them now, they either, you know, didn't really go that far, or nobody wanted to work with them, or whatever, because the world has changed and we've become a little more sensitive to all that, right? So yeah, that's pretty cool. How did you land your first like real front of house sound gig? What does that look like?
So it started quite a long time ago. So while I was taking that Humber course, I met the instructor Kitty Cross, and she connected me with Mariposa Organization, which is a folk festival that runs every year, but they also do events during the year as well. Mm. And they had one at the Transat Club in Toronto and through the Flying Cloud. So I would drive while I was at MIA in my Chevette car to Toronto and set up a small little Audio Pro.
You can't even make that up, right?
A small little 12-channel Audio Pro powered mixer. And I would mix these folk artists in a very, very small room, really like probably twice the size of this. But it was a really good listening experience for me, because you could hear the acoustic instruments so well in the room that the electronic reinforcement with the speakers, you couldn't make it sound radically different because it wouldn't match, right? So it was about blending and a really good listening to the source. And a lot of folk purists don't have pickups on their instruments, right? Because they think it colors the sound of the instrument. So whether it's an acoustic guitar, a banjo, or ukulele, a lot of them you have to mic them, which in live can often lead to feedback if you're trying to get a lot of volume. So it was really a good listening experience. So I was doing that. And then I started doing calls with a company called Westbury National Sound Systems, working as a freelance labor for them. And it would be everything from like hanging up pipe and drape and maybe moving some mic cables. And then while I was at Fanshawe as well, I started doing smaller shows in and around town. I started working for Paul O'Neill, for Paul Sound and Lighting, a London representative here. Yeah. I did sound for him, and he would do a lot of different events around town. And then I started working as the VP of Entertainment at Fanshawe College. So I was working with John B. Young, the talent buyer, famous London individual, and then help him with the concerts as well that were going on as sort of as a promoter rep. And then I would go over to Western University and I worked with Pete Stambridge back in the day. And
which is where we met, by the way.
That's right. That's where your dad, the PA shop, was doing all the shows for like Frosh Week and Orientation and Homecoming. And they had concert series. And that whole period, I didn't know at the time, was such an incredibly creative time for campus music.
It was insane.
And you look back now, it's not the same.
No.
But so many bands came out of that. Like the Tragically Hip started as a Queen's University band out of Kingston. Spirit of the West, Pursuit of Happiness, Crash Test Dummies, Amanda Marshall, The Tea Party, Blue Rodeo. All these bands came out of this incredibly prolific time
Even
in Canadian
Widemouth
history.
Mason. Coke in 97, Widemouth Mason performed here in London at the Hilton. I didn't have a clue who they were, and they blew the socks off the stage. It was like, whoa, who is that? And the next thing you know, they're touring Canada.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was definitely an exciting time. There was so much going on. Really a fun time as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I forgot that whole time was really great. It really was. And it's hard to explain for people that weren't there, but it was, you're right, 100%. It was a magical time. For so many reasons, but it was just musically, it was a good time, and performance wise, and the bands were tight, and they were, and the students were behind it, and the schools were behind it, and it was a really cool time for that, and I don't really fully understand why it changed. I mean, I think everything kind of ebbs and flows, but I did see, it's better now. It is a lot better now, actually. At least I can't speak to all the schools in Canada, but I can speak to Western. I mean, it's definitely better now than it's ever been in the last, we'll say, 20 years, for sure. Western University supports, all kinds of different types of events and all kinds of different styles of music, and they're doing They have they have several concert venues now, and they're doing all kinds of stuff, but. It took some time to get there, and there were some bumps in the road, but we had some good, alert. There's still people there now. Shout out to Andy Renson. There's still some people now that are at Western that were there at that time and remember, and we're able to help bring some of that back. And I hope that some of the other schools are doing the same thing, because those were super magical times, and yeah. And it was awesome working with you back then because, for me, I was surrounded by a bunch of, male front of house guys, right? So for you to be there, it was like, oh, Deb's here. This is awesome. This is totally cool. Because you always had that great personality, and you're always smiling, and it's great to work with. And so, yeah, that was super fun times. So talking about touring, how do you prepare for a tour? What does that look like?
So I think for a new artist, like it starts with a discussion with the musical director of the band, or sometimes the band themselves, about how they want the mix to be. So, and every artist is different, and every scenario is a bit different. So part of what I do is just kind of going with the flow of whatever that artist is. So for example, like I toured with Serena Ryder, and we toured her latest record, The Art of Falling Apart. And she said, Deb, I want the mix to sound like the record. So I spent a lot of time listening to the record and going over old mixes from some older shows that I had done to really kind of create that sound. And then some musicians are like, just do whatever you want. You just do your thing. I'm going to play my instrument and you do whatever you want out there. So like I said, every artist is a bit different of where their focus is. So you kind of work with them on that. And if it's somebody new, sometimes I'll see if I can get a board mix of their old mixes, and then like, what did you like? What didn't you like? Where do you want to focus on? And some, again, artists want it to sound just like the record. So you listen to the record over and over. And then a lot of now, so many times fans are posting social media clips, and even on their cell phone, but you can kind of get a sense of what's in the mix or how things are sounding. So that's all kind of part of it too. And going through the artist's back catalog as well to, come up with what they want. And then the next thing is the equipment. Like, are we going to rent equipment? Or like, what kind of console? Are we going to carry in our PA? what kind of PA would I recommend based on the venues and the type of music and, you know, the flexibility of the PA and the budget, of course, how much is it going to cost and how are we going to get it around? So you start to look at all those things to kind of piece it together in order to put the show and the package together for the fans.
Yeah. How often, that's a good question. How often are you carrying your whole rig versus just carrying like a front of house monitor package? Like what's the sort of balance between them?
It sort of depends on the artist. Like if they're on a larger theater tour, like I would say probably like 2,000 seaters and up, or an arena tour, we carry full production. And if you're doing arenas, most arenas won't have a concert sound system. You need to bring, you know, your own rig with us. Smaller artists, like even David Wilcox, we don't carry production. I still use whatever console is there that day. So as a freelance engineer, I have to be able to mix a show on whatever console happens to be there that day. Is it a console that I would put on my technical writer that I would like? Maybe not, but can I mix a show on it? You have to be able to get through it. So as a freelance engineer, you have to be versatile. You have to be able to deal with whatever equipment's there. You may not always get what you want in terms of equipment selection. Most artists, though, I would say, once you get to a certain level and you've got songs being played on the radio, your fans are expecting a good show, you know. And somebody like yourself going to a show, you've got to get a babysitter now. You got to drive to the venue, you got to get parking. It's a whole thing. And
it's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. And when you get there, you want to have a great show. So most, I would say, larger club acts will carry what we call a universal audio package. So that would be your front of house console, maybe some microphones, possibly a monitor console, or do monitors, in-ear monitors from front of house as well, would be kind of be the minimum. And also I say to the artists, if you want your shows to be consistent, you really need to bring your own equipment. And if you're on a tour and you're dialing in a different console every day from scratch and doing sound check with in-ears, your sound checks are going to take a long time. Like today we're on a Midas, tomorrow we're on a Yamaha, next day we're on a Digico, the next day we're on a DigiDesign or an Avid. So we have to rebuild those files in for each of those consoles. So the band is going to have long sound checks. And when you're on a tour, the band doesn't want to do that. When you carry your own equipment, they can just come in, line check, rip one or two songs, and they can be done and rest up for the show. So that becomes part of it. The longer that tour is, you just start thinking about how grueling sound checks are for the artist if it's different consoles. So you kind of come at it from that way, you know.
Especially if it's instruments, like you said earlier, that don't have pickups, right? Like to have to EQ and sound check all those wireless mics on those acoustic instruments every single day on different consoles in different venues with different acoustics, on and on and on, right? It'll take a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, you definitely want to be trying to carry a universal package and sort of that in that scenario. So what's it in the touring side of things? Like, what's it like being on the road? What is that? What's your perspective on that?
It's so fun.
Yeah.
And so relaxing. No, I'm just kidding. I actually love touring, which is why I've survived this next year by my 30th year of freelancing, believe it or not.
Wow, we got to have a party.
That's a long time to survive, not having a real job, as my parents like to remind me. I love the energy. For me, we talked about that spark, that first moment of that concert when the lights go down and everyone's like singing along, and that excitement for me is still just as exciting now as it was when I was a teenager. And it's that excitement and adrenaline that keeps me going for it. In fact, we did a show with David Wilcox at the Kitchener Blues Festival a couple years ago. It was a daytime show in one of their tents, and he walked out on stage for the top of the show, and the whole audience gave him a standing ovation.
Wow.
Hadn't played a note. And I just got goosebumps. And it was just one of those moments. It's like, this is why I do this. It was so incredible. But the trade-off is that it's long hours. As we know in production, you're loading in early in the morning, plus a grueling travel schedule. Not eating healthy, trying to stay active on the road and work out is hard. Being away from home. So you kind of trade off all those things. But if you love it, and which I still do after all these years, that's what keeps you going, is that drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did some small stints on the road touring and stuff like that. And obviously I have so much going on here, but nothing like that. Like to see somebody having done 30 years, I mean, that's incredible. And, you know, I mean, for your parents to say you don't have a real job, I mean, look how many people you've worked with and how many people's lives you've changed with your sound, and all the people that you guaranteed inspired other women to get into the scene. And yeah, it's incredible. I mean, how do you think your life would be different if you hadn't have chosen that path? Like if you didn't go on the road, how do you think your life would be different?
That's a good question. I mean, there's different avenues that live sound engineers can go into. Like some people could work as a production company, you know, here at the PA shop, and they go out and do different shows for whatever that production company tells them to do. Some people can work as a venue at a theater, and that's their life, and they work in that one venue all the time and never tour. So there's different facets of the industry that people can go into and find what works for them. And some people will do all of those things. So like I work at the Burlington Performing Arts Center occasionally as local labor when they need help, when I'm not on the road, and then work with other freelance production companies as well. So sometimes you can just kind of make a living of doing all those things, and then you can just find out again what, you know, if you want to have some kind of home life, probably not touring is going to be your better option for sure. So,
is there any drawbacks? Is there any, like, you mentioned a few of them already, obviously, but is there any sort of major drawbacks from being on the road all the time?
I mean, I think
like how's your friend life?
The hardest thing is being away from all of your friends and families, right? So when somebody's having a wedding anniversary, or their child is graduating from school, or there's a hockey tournament that somebody won, you're going to miss a lot of those things. You're going to be away for a lot. That would probably be the hardest thing. But any touring musician will say the same thing. You know, that you're away a lot is probably the biggest drawback. But some of the perks are you get to travel. You know, I've got to travel all over the world on somebody else's dime and had that incredible opportunity. So there's some, you know, the trade-offs of what you want to do. So
what's you mixed in everything from tents to probably backyards to arenas so what's your sort of approach to being able to mix an artist in all those sort of different scenarios?
That's a great question. So like when I'm preparing for an artist, you know, when I start to mix the show, or like in preparation for mixing the show, I have in my mind a picture of what I want it to sound like, of the perfect live mix. And probably after 30 years of freelance touring, I could count on both hands those times I got it. You know, I actually I call it the dangling carrot. I actually get to grab the carrot and have the mix come out like I hear it in my head. So most of my life is spent in sheer frustration, which is the downside of being a perfectionist, is you never really get to that perfect mix. So in my mind, I know what I want it to sound like, and I know the band, if I'm touring with them, which is my favorite situation because I know every note before they play it. I know at this part, the guitar player does this thing, and then I have a drum solo here, and the vocal sings a bit quieter here, and this backup sings too loud here. I just automatically know the show so well. And then what really changes is the venue. So if you're playing in a small seat theater, or like with Talk, for example, we just finished a small club tour. So we played everything from 200 seat clubs in the States, which were crappy venues with crappy PA systems and a crappy load-in.
Been there.
Up to, we played First Avenue in Minneapolis, like Prince's venue, right? So huge, cool venues with the latest L Acoustics PA. And then we opened up for Shania Twain in Toronto at Scotiabank Arena. So they are an example of an artist that's playing a huge variety of shows and doing massive festivals. So really, it's about tailoring the mix to that show. So even on the small club shows with PA systems that weren't that great, I still try to do the best I can, you know, to make the PA do the best it can to have some kind of consistent sound over all the different venues. And then that's the goal, is to make them sound good in any venue that you perform. And ideally, that's what they would hire me for. So
it's a big difference between a club gig and an arena stadium gig. Like, it is a huge difference. Both, I mean, I come from the lighting side. It's much different in lighting too. But from an audio perspective, it's just, there's so many variables there that people probably sitting in the stands don't understand. Some of which you don't have any control over. So yeah, I mean, you know, kudos to you and all the other sound technicians around the world for what you do with some of these venues, because some of them don't sound very good. And the fact that, you know, you can pull it off, you know, I mean, it's certainly not your perfect mix, but, you know, I mean, Centennial Hall here in London, you know, had everybody complained about the sound there for years. But I mean, we've done everybody there, right? Radiohead to Sum 41 to you name it. And all those sound engineers pulled it off, you know? So, you know, not always is it and I mean, hockey arenas are not designed for sound, right? The new Sphere just went up, and that was sort of I saw a bunch of the interviews with the guys who just designed it, and that was, and with you too, and that was sort of the conversation was, hockey arenas were never designed for concerts. This was designed for concerts. And, so that, I thought that was an interesting approach because, look at how many, millions and, tens of millions of concerts have now been done in hockey arenas for decades. And it takes, amazing design and technology, which we'll get into, and people with talented ears and know the songs, and that helps. You touched on something earlier in some sort of the drawbacks, and I was curious about sort of what your perspective is on this from like the crew side, but also the artist side, about sort of being on the road and diet and like, managing sort of your health. Because that's a thing, right? Like, especially on the artist side, like the artist sometimes can, maybe drink too much or eat the wrong thing. And, and if you can't sing, it's kind of a problem,
For sure. I mean, I think when I was younger, I didn't take as much care of myself as I do when I get older. And it's just one of the things you just learn, you have to sort of take care of yourself. And especially because there's so much physical work in live sound. Every day you're moving speakers and equipment around. You got to be able to do the lifting. So I work out and I jog on the road and hit the gym and do the resistance training. I find that really helps me. I try my best with a diet, but a lot of times you're eating at irregular hours. You're eating after the show. Sometimes you don't always have time to go for dinner in between sound checks or if there's technical problems, especially for crew, or you have like half an hour to go and find food and you can't find anything healthy, within 30 minutes and be back to where you need to be. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges. When you get on a tour bus, it does help because there's a kitchen on the tour bus. You can stock that with healthy, quick, foods to keep yourself healthy. So that certainly helps. When you're on a van tour, it's pretty difficult, because you can't carry the fridge with you for sure. So yeah, that's a thing. I mean, if you're an artist that's touring and you have catering and you can be kind of selective of what you're like, that's one thing. But yeah, like you said, if you're in a van tour, it's a whole other world, for sure, 100%. Who would you say you've worked with the longest? Because I know you mentioned 17 years earlier with Wilcox. Well, who's the person that you've worked with kind of the longest? Would it be him? I think David Wilcox is the record for me for 17 years. And generally, the way I prefer to work is I find a group of musicians that I know really well. I know what they want to sound like. And they respect me and I respect them. And we have a great artist and technician relationship. And then we become like a family on the road. And we go through all the challenges of, difficult venues, easy venues, great shows, not so great shows. But we really become a family and become really close on the road. And certainly there's some crew that I've worked with. We just get into such a great flow on the road. There is nothing you can't figure out. And every day you just come in when you're all working together and you're helping each other out. That is my favorite thing when we have a great crew team and putting the right personalities together. And it's not just skill set. For myself as a production manager, when I'm putting a crew together, you could be the greatest guitar tech. You could be the greatest drum tech, the greatest lighting person. But at the end of the day, when you're on a tour, you have to get on the tour bus with everybody else. Mm-hmm. And if you can't have those personality skills to get along with people, you're going to be confrontational, or you're going to be showing up drunk or showing up late, you're not going to last. Doesn't matter how great your skill set is, right? Yeah. Because when you're touring, you're living with people. You work from maybe 8 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock at night, but then you get on the tour bus. So they're the people you've just spent all day with now right across from you. So it's really important to navigate your people skills. Is really important to survive on the road. Is
there like tour bus etiquette? Like, what does that look like?
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing is to keep your area clean. Like, don't put your dirty socks in the front couches. So normally there's like a front couch area with a kitchenette and a little table, and then there'll be the middle area of the bus with what we call the bunks, which are like beds, basically like a bunk bed stacked 2 or 3 high. That's everybody's sleeping quarters. That's kind of a quiet zone. And then usually there's another couch area at the back of the bus too. So keeping the area clean is really good, not making a mess. Don't leave half-eaten food sitting out on the table. Like that kind of stuff is really, really important. There's a long list of bus rules for sure to keep everybody happy. Yeah, for sure.
So 30 years, how have you survived 30 years? doing this?
That is a great question. And I would say love. I just really, really loved it. And I think I just wanted it so bad. There are many, many live sound engineers out there who are far better than me. And like we talked about earlier, not all of them have lasted. And I think for me, I just loved it. And I had the drive to just keep going. And, is it Wayne Gretzky? I shouldn't do a sports analogy. Has that quote, you never make 100% of the shots you don't take, something along that lines. So that the goal is basically, even if when you fall, and we all fail, but you get up and you keep going. And that's what makes you successful. And every sound engineer will have stories that they thought they were terrible. And it was the worst night, when something went really wrong. And I've had sound engineers saying, oh, I had such a terrible night. I said, what are you talking about? Your mix was amazing. And I've had nights myself where I'm like, oh, that mix was terrible. And people come to me, oh my God, it was the best mix we ever heard in this venue. Best time I heard this band. So we're our toughest critics, I think, for sure. But
oh yeah,
to succeed it, I think I just really wanted it and just loved it and still do to this day.
Even as a lighting tech, I'm super critical. Like if I mess up a cue or something turns off when it's not supposed to, and then not always, but sometimes at the end of the show, a few people will come up to, hey man, that was great, and I'm like, all right, cool. They didn't notice. All right,
yeah.
Only I noticed because I knew I missed the cue. Yeah. Why freelance? Because just for those people that don't know, there's obviously freelance techs, and then like you said, there's full time, which would be at a venue or a production company or whatever. Why freelance?
I really like freelance because I basically get to pick and choose the clients I work with. And I love that freedom. And so when I sign on with a client, it's because I love them and I'm really into the record or I'm really into their show. So artists that I'm not as interested in working with, or artists, to be honest, and I won't mention any names, but I've heard that are unprofessional on the road. So whether that's a lot of partying or they're showing up late or disrespecting their crew, we all talk in the industry. It's very small in Canada. Everyone knows each other. So if I get a call from that artist, I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm not available. I don't have to, take that on, where sometimes if you're working for a production company, they tell you where to go. You're going to go and do this job, or you're going to do this tour, even if you don't want to do it. So for me, freelancing, I like being able to pick projects that I really love with people I really like. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that stems all the way back to your core, right? Like in the beginning when you were, watching all those artists live on stage. It was for the love of it, right? So I think that's probably why. Yeah, it makes sense. That's probably why you still love it now, is because you get to pick the music and the artists and the things that you love, right? Whereas if you didn't get to pick that and you were jaded and frustrated and then it would be a totally different experience. What's the, and I know it sounds like a random question, but it's like pouring outside right now. But this is something people, again, that come to shows don't think about, is like crazy weather. Like what's a crazy weather story that you have from being on the road? Do you have any?
I am really lucky, thank goodness. I've never been a part of a stage collapse for sure. But there's many, stories about horrible stage collapses where there's been fatalities, and we know with climate change our world is changing. And so I think now more and more festivals now will normally have a weather person or somebody from like a local airport that's monitoring the radar or the weather system really actively. And most large festivals will have protocols in place. When the wind is this speed, we do these things. We bring down the video wall panels, we drop the side drapes on the stage. When the wind goes to this kind of thing, then we shut down the stage. When it goes to this, we evacuate the site. So I think more and more people now are becoming very strict, and I'm glad for that. I think in our industry, it was kind of unregulated for a long time. Anybody could put up a stage and do a festival without really having proper structural engineering done, without having a proper weather plan. And unfortunately, I think it's taken some stage collapses for us to be, as an industry, far more aware of that and to have safety as the forefront. And I think that's a great thing, that we just become more safe as an industry, more aware of that.
Any of the artists that you've worked with gone on and played even though it was raining? Have they gone on and played, or do they all not play when it's raining?
Most of the artists will want to play, especially when their fans are standing there in the rain, and it's pouring down. I've had artists play through rain, yes, but not with lightning. Lightning is when we shut it all down.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it depends. Is the stage covered? If it's a larger stage and our equipment is still dry and the musicians are safe, yes. If the wind is blowing the rain in onto the stage, onto their pedals and their microphones, when now the artist could get electrocuted, no, well, then we shut it down, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times you just have to kind of look at the situation.
So kind of the same question, but take the weather out of it. Craziest gig you've ever had? Gig day even.
Like the longest day?
Longest and or craziest day?
Well, usually my craziest days have to do with airlines where I've had nightmare stories. I'm trying to think of anything on a stage where it's been like that. The worst one I was flying home from a Susan and Glue Cart show. I landed in Ottawa and we sat on the tarmac in winter for 6 hours.
What?
That was brutal. And we were trying to fly to Toronto.
Was Susan on the plane?
No, it was just me. I think she was going somewhere else. It was just me. And so the plane had pulled away from the gate. We were sitting on like kind of the pad of the airport. And they said, oh, we're delayed for 20 minutes. We're delayed for another 20 minutes, delayed for 30 minutes. Then we have to de-ice. Then we're waiting for de-ice clearance. And then it just went on and on and on. And then they said, we can't fly now. The pilots have crossed over when they're legally allowed to fly. But we couldn't back up to the gate to deplane because the whole tarmac had become completely iced. So we were stuck there.
Wow.
And so that was the worst one. And then we finally got back into the airport. And of course, the airlines had no help for us. So usually my horror stories are all airline based.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I just went through something similar to that on my way to Florida last time on an airline I've never traveled on before, but I won't mention the airline, but yeah, it was an experience. Smaller airport, wasn't a lot of help there. But we pulled it off. Thankfully, I had my brother, the production manager, on standby. And hey, Kyle, we need a hotel. I got a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old, and oh yeah. So yeah, I mean that happens in real life too. The airline thing. That's yeah. That and I can't even imagine if you were on the road with the band and that happened. Like that's thankfully you're picking bands that are cool and calm. I mean, some bands are not so cool and calm. But neither are 1-year-old children. So, there's a synergy there somewhere. Are there any favorite tours and or artists that you have done or that you have enjoyed?
I think my favorite one of my whole career is still Lilith Fair in 1999. I got to tour as a system tech for Jason Sound. And it was my first tour bus tour. So I had that up until that point, I had been doing a lot of Sprinter vans and Ford Econoline van tours. And I still have a picture of me in the doorway of the tour bus. And I was so excited that I could work like an 18-hour day, but then I didn't have to drive at the end of the day. I just thought this was the greatest thing. And Sarah McLachlan, of course, is such an iconic artist, but also an incredible woman and leader, and just set such a beautiful tone for that whole tour, and all the crew get along with each other really well. And I also wasn't production managing or tour managing, and it was rapidly after that I switched into the whole front of house tour management role where you're just nonstop work. So that was one of my favorite ones. Really enjoying working with Talk right now. These guys are just on fire, great band, and really focused and really exciting. So they're kind of one of my favorite ones, I think, right now. And then even like David Wilcox, he's still playing. He just bought a new Fender Telecaster guitar, and he's just like a kid at Christmas, and he's so excited to be playing. And that energy that he has, the audience feels it, and the crew feel it, and the band feel it, and it's just been an amazing experience. So
yeah, absolutely. So technology, this is a good part for essay. Throw up some of these photos that you sent over, Deb. Speaking of technology, there's all kinds of technology. Hey, there he is with his Telecaster right there. But consoles. What's your favorite console? Because you got like in all these different photos, like that's an SD12, but you've got, like you said earlier, you show up sometimes when you're not carrying. There's a beautiful console. That's awesome. What's your favorite console? Do you have one?
I mean, there's sort of all different makes and models. And like I said, for freelancing, you really need to be able to work on all different consoles that are out there. So if you're working at a venue like the Burlington Performing Arts Center, they might have a specific venue that they always use. So once you know that console, you're good. But freelance, you really do need to be able to do to be able to mix a show on whatever. And as sound engineers, we get really fussy about our consoles. Oh, we want this, or I want this version of software, or make sure it's got this feature. But the audience doesn't care. They can't listen to a show and say, oh, that's this manufacturer console, or that's this manufacturer. And to be honest, the audience probably couldn't care less. They just want the show to sound good.
Just want it to sound good.
You know,
Is that, go back, essay? That's a cute little console. Is that something that you would tour with? Is that a venue console, or is that yours?
That's one I've toured with Serena Ryder. That's an Allen and Heath C1500. And that's the same one I've been taking out with Talk. We flew to Europe with those cases. You can actually fly those cases. They have a titanium version as well. The in a case comes under 50 pounds. You can actually check it like you do with your luggage at the airlines and take it to Europe.
Yeah.
That's a great example of how technology has changed, for sure, that you can fly your console.
Yeah. I wish I would have known you were going to say that. I would have pulled up a photo of our old like PM3000 or Series 5 or something. There's a couple of those still exist in the warehouse over there. I'm sure the Series 5 is still there. And the PM1800, which is what that tour jacket says on the back of it.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, lots of venue consoles, eh? It was a real popular console.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're one of the.
You still see a lot of venue consoles because there's not a lot of parts for them left anymore.
Oh, the SXL, they're pushing the new console, the SXL now. It's not new anymore, but it's been around for a couple of years. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Essay. So how do you stay current with technology? Because there's obviously these things are changing all the time, and you're on the road. It's not like you're going back to school or anything. So like, what does that look like?
So that's another great question because the technology changes all the time. The different consoles come out, but even when they have a different software come out, it might change how that console operates. So trying to stay on top of any technology that's computers, just like live sound or lighting, it's nonstop. You have to stay on top of it. And again, because I freelance, I need to be able to go into any situation. And even amplifiers. You and I will remember the days that we'd plug an old amplifier with some banana plugs in, and the amplifier, you turned it on, and that was it. There was maybe volume, but now the technology and amplifiers, you need to get out the manual. You can do so much processing just on the amplifiers alone. And PA systems have changed so much as well. So I'll take courses if available, and some I'm on a lot of mailing lists for manufacturers. So they say, oh, we're doing a product demo of this, speaker line, or like you guys have done Adamsman training here at the PA shop. I've come and attended that.
Yeah.
Gear Audio just did one on Digico training, on the console for Digico.
We're doing it here too. It's coming up.
Right. Yeah. So, I taking those kind of things. I spent 2 days at Apex Sound, taking that. So, and sometimes there'll be trade shows. You go down and do that. And then sometimes if I know I'm on a console that I haven't done a lot of shows on, maybe I'll call a company up and say, hey guys, it's Deb. Can I come and borrow the console, come in the shop and play around with it? And most production companies are really great. And right now we're using a company called Soundbox out of Hamilton, and they're really great with freelance engineers. They say, hey, Deb, if there's a console, you want to come in and practice, bring in some tracks and just mess around, come on down. And
shout out to Kevin Fix.
Yeah.
Old school PA shop boy. So, I've spent so many times in a 5-ton with that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So most companies, like I could probably call you guys up and say, hey, I want to come out and check out this console. Sure, Deb, come on in. So you kind of call those favors out to do that. But yeah, you have to stay on top of the technology and going for training and YouTube tutorials and all the time for sure.
So you do end up doing some of your own sort of courses, and you find time, like you find a space where it's available when you're not on the road. But that shows your dedication too, because some people wouldn't do that. Like some people would be like, no, I got to see my friends and hang out with my friends, but that shows real dedication to your craft too, right?
Well, there's a whole generation of when analog consoles were kind of just coming out and digital consoles were coming in. And I remember there were some analog sound engineers that said, I don't like digital, I don't like the way it sounds, I'm not going to learn it. And they ended up kind of getting dinosaur'd out. Like you have to change with the technology. I
personally know people that happened to. But yes, you did have to, and you made the point about the amplifiers. It's the same with the amps. Like back in those days, hooking up an amp rack, like running the front of house was one thing because you had comps and gates and effects and whatever, and that was another thing on its own. But running amps back in the day, I mean, as long as everything was, in terms of impedance was loaded properly, like you said, you just turn the amps on, turn them up, and everything's done in the processor. Or crossover, or on the console. And now it's totally different. Like our touring racks that we have now, they're completely networked. You know, every single component from every single box has a separate amp channel that you can monitor on a computer. Yeah, it's another level entirely. So, random question: favorite microphone and why?
For singing or anything in general?
Anything.
I would say the KM184.
Oh, really?
The Neumann, yep. I love it on overheads. I love it on pianos. I love it on acoustic instruments that don't have a pickup. And it's the most clean, clear, top-end sounding microphone. Wouldn't use it on vocals, but great on orchestras, string sections. And it's one of my favorite cleanest mics.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. What are some good traits to have when you're doing FOH?
So you need the skill set to operate the console, but at the end of the day, and this is maybe my older analog training, is that, and again, we talked about this, sound engineers get really fussy about their consoles, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool, right? It's just a tool to get to that mix and to bring out what the artist is trying to put out for the audience, out to their fans. And I kind of look at the PA tuning as kind of like a blank canvas. And so I come in and I make the canvas look all white. If it's got some dirty marks, I try to clean it up so it's just like a clean canvas so that then I can paint, which is the mixing analogy of bringing that out. So some people get really into, I only use on this specific console, but for me, it's like, it's just a tool. Like if you're sculpting, you just grab a different chisel. It's the same kind of thing. So you really have to have the vision of that. And then you've got to be able to work really fast under high pressure and high stress under time constraints, because in live, we have a saying, doors are at 7. So the console doesn't load, the power was late, the stage is in the wrong spot, you're missing crew, the truck was late, all these things happen in live. But all of those problems have to be solved because at 7 o'clock is when the audience comes in. And everything has to look like it's fine. And the show must go on. Like we live and die by that. So being able to handle high stress, and then as a production manager, it's not only for me looking at the sound, it's looking at lighting. So I might have a smooth day in audio, but if you're setting up lighting, you're like, oh, Deb, my media server isn't talking to the lighting console. I have to help fix that, or we have to deal with that as well before the doors happen. Or the guitar player goes, I plugged in my amp, it's not working now. You've got to troubleshoot all of that because that's an integral part of the whole show as well. So it's really about looking at all those pieces. And then also artist handling, how you speak to the artists. They have to be able to build that trust relationship that you can talk about things and trust each other's judgment and advice. Because basically when the show starts, you're representing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's something I take very seriously. So it's all those things together. And to me, mixing is, I love it because it's left brain, right brain. There's the right brain, very structured, like how does the PA sound and what frequencies are the subwoofers crossing over? And, do we have the side hand coverage and where does that PA drop off? And it's all the technical physics of everything. But then also there's the creative side of how do I feel right now when I hear this music, And can you hear everything? And how's the audience reacting and how's the band feeling? So it's both sides, it's creative and also very technical.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's an incredible perspective. What's another question is, and I mean, you do both and even kind of do both now off one console. How do you approach front of house versus monitors? Because they're different, right? And how do you what's your sort of perspective on that?
So I started my career as a front of house engineer, and then I actually morphed into in-ear monitor tech. So again, that's like a wireless pack that the artists will wear with a small little, it started from hearing aid technology, but now they become like little speaker drivers that they can hear themselves. And then I would be kind of specializing in in-ear monitor mixing. And then when that kind of started to slow down, and then I went back into front of house and started to do that. So when I'm doing monitors, it's basically you mix to what that artist wants to hear. So a drummer, for example, might want to hear kick drum and snare, and that's it. So you might listen to their mix and go, man, that sounds terrible. There's no guitar. All I can hear is kick and snare. But for the drummer, that's what they need in order to perform. And most drummers that are on the click, which is like a steady beat so that everyone knows that they're on the right tempo. And most current artists, especially ones that have tracks performing, will have a click, and the band will be playing to a click. the click is so loud in the drummer's mix. You'll solo it as a monitor tech and, oh my gosh, it's so loud. But that's what they need to do that. And sometimes I've had singers where their mix, the vocal is so shrill and bright, it's piercing for me to listen to it, but that's what the artist wants to hear, like for them clarity-wise. So monitoring is really about what the artist wants, and I use the saying many times, it's more psycho than acoustic. And it's psychological. It's being able to look at the artist. And again, that's where we get into the technology. So imagine you're playing a show and you need something on monitors, and you look over me, I'm doing monitors, but I'm looking down at my console the whole time. We're not making eye contact. So it's about understanding your console and doing the least amount of moves on the console, so the whole time you can be looking at the artist and saying, I'm watching you, I'm listening, I'm here for you, and building up that trust. So that's what monitoring for me is about trust and having them feel comfortable with you. And when we transition from floor monitors, which were speakers that the musicians could hear themselves to in-ear monitors, now our loud source is right near their eardrum. So if you have an artist wearing in-ear monitors and then you unplug like a phantom power microphone, it's going to go bang. And that's really loud in a monitor. But if it's right close to their eardrum, you can actually cause hearing damage.
Yeah, right.
And I take that very seriously as a monitor tech, that when I hand over a pack, and this gets into wireless coordination, so those packs are all run on a wireless frequency, and you need to do your homework as a monitor tech to make sure that you've done your frequency coordination, to select the frequencies that are going to not cut out or distort or make little noises in the artist's in-ear, that when I hand the pack over the artist, it's like my career's on the line. I'm like, I feel confident in this mix for you, and I'm not going to blow out your hearing. So a lot of respect for that, you know?
Yeah, that's a big deal, eh? How many artists are opting for in-ears now versus wedges? What would you say?
I'd say most current artists right now are probably on in-ears because of the freedom of movement. They can move around all over the stage. It's going to sound the same. And again, if they're on a click, most artists don't want to have a click in the monitor because the audience can hear it. It'd be like click, 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 click. So they'll go to in-ears. So because of that, that will be the biggest thing that will drive most current musicians over to in-ears.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. But I never thought about it, because I've never done monitors. I've never thought about it from that perspective. You know, with the dawn of in-ears, you really are in charge of those people's hearing. Like, that's a really big responsibility, actually. And again, something else that, you know, people watching this who are audience members mostly would never think of. You know, they don't even sometimes realize there's a monitor tech even on the stage because they're hidden. But that's a pretty serious role, you know. So it's good that you take it seriously, but it is serious. Like, I've never thought about it really to that sort of depth that, you know, yeah, you really are putting your careers, like if you lose your hearing, you're toast. And so you really are putting your careers in the hands of this person. So you got to trust them. That is got to be a big part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So, I mean, so how often are you doing one versus the other? Are you just doing front of house now?
Mainly just front of house. And a lot of artists, like I said, have really transitioned into, since the advent of Pro Tools now, a lot of musicians are doing home studio recording. So even more musicians are becoming more kind of what we call tech savvy, you know, where they are involved in their production. And a lot of younger artists now are self-producing their own things. They're having Ableton sessions or Pro Tools. And so then they just went to get an X32 rack and they can mix on their cell phones. So a lot of bands now are actually coming out quite tech savvy. And I was talking with a sound engineer recently, the role of that monitor tech that used to be this revered position is now kind of becoming a little bit more obsolete. More bands are coming in with their own mixes, or they have an iPad side stage that's controlling the mixes. And if you're bringing a touring universal package, sometimes your mixes are fairly consistent night to night. Again, if you're doing a new console, then you've got to re-sound check every day. But that's another reason why we call it plug and play. You just want to plug everything in, put your in-ears in, and you have roughly the same mix as you will. And as we talked about, the venues can change from a small club to arena. So maybe you adjust your reverb settings or your audience mics, which are microphones we set up by the speakers to hear the audience interaction so the band can hear the audience's energy. So that can really depend on that. But I would say most bands now are sort of moving towards in-ears as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What's your perspective on how you approach different clients, different venues, different things? Because there's more than just rock and roll and all that, right? Like there's churches, there's all different kinds of stuff. What's your perspective on that?
And so again, like any freelance engineer, you do different shows. I did some shows at houses of worship during the pandemic. So it's a very different world. It's still consoles, there's still PA. But I would say like the language we use is different than rock and roll. So for example, if you want to be a versatile freelance engineer, don't get face tattoos, and don't show up drunk or high. You want to be responsible. Don't use inappropriate language. Don't swear, because a house of worship, that's not going to work. You might be the greatest sound engineer, but if you can't work with a volunteer base or people that are very faith-based, they may take offense to how you dress. Don't show up with ripped clothes or a T-shirt that has swearing on it or something like that. You want to be able to be, again, it all comes down to people skills. So when I'm a rock band, it's maybe a bit more chill. We're sitting around having a glass of wine and tell some stories and joking around. But in a house of worship, you want to be more professional. And then I work sometimes with a company called Stage Vision, and they do corporate shows. So we're dealing with, CEOs of banks. So they want to talk to people in a certain very professional level as well. So it's about even though it's a console and there's microphones and speakers, so the sound is the same, but how you interact with your client is really, really different,
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of corporate shows here too, and we are constantly, a production company, you are changing those hats. Freelance, same thing, right? It's interesting. I think I've most recently I've seen a lot of success actually with young people really being able to wear those two different hats pretty successfully. The dress thing is another thing though. Like I'm really gonna start bugging some of my guys on that. But what are some of the must-haves sort of things in your toolbox that you think are must-haves that you gotta have on the road?
So for me as a freelance engineer, I have a really small kit of stuff that I can fly and actually can fit in my knapsack. I can actually carry it with me. So that'll be my headphones. Mm-hmm. And that, again, is a very personal thing because it's how you relate to what you're hearing versus what changes you're making in the mix. So very personal for that. I have my own custom in-ear molds as well for like dialing in in-ear mixes. I have a talkback mic with a switch, so I don't have to fumble between pages of consoles to talk to the band. I can just grab the mic and turn the switch on. Hey, guys, let me hear the kick drum. I have my iPod for music playback, and then I have an ISO transformer so I don't blow up my headphone jack on my iPod. And those are the key things. And then I have like an RF Explorer I use as a scanner now for like RF frequency coordination. I have a smart kit as well for tuning that I use occasionally. And I have like a whole bunch of adapters and turnarounds, XLRs to quarter inch and things like that. So
cool. You mean you don't rely on the production company to supply you a mic in front of house? Yeah. That's kind of changing too. Like I've seen like on bigger setups too with talkback to monitors and stuff. They have like little speakers now. Whereas back in the 80s and stuff, we would just sort of talk through the monitors and stage.
Or yell.
You can't do that now because now there's no monitors on stage anymore.
Yeah.
Or yell. Yeah, this is true. This happened more often than I think I remember. Is there any new sort of technology trends that you're seeing?
I mean, the biggest one sort of going back in time was from analog to digital that we touched on. That was a huge industry. So lighting went into digital for faster than analog did, where we hung on with analog for a long time. And then finally went over to digital consoles. So the ability to save our file on a USB stick and then email that file to an upcoming show now is a game changer. And most manufacturers will have what we call an offline editor, so they can go to the manufacturer's website and they will have the same software program that's on their console on a computer. So you can build your file on your computer. You don't even need access to the actual console. Save that file on a USB. And then email that file to somebody else. And a lot of times, especially if it's a festival where we don't have time to sound check, I will email a show file to the production company and say, hey guys, load this in your shop, make sure it loads, make sure the version software is compatible. And then when I get there, I know that that's going to be one less potential problem on show day. So that was a huge step in technology. And then going from wedges to in-ears was another big step, and the frequency bandwidth that we use for wireless technologies is shrinking now. So it's a very, very demanding environment. You need to have some skill set with wireless coordination before you use any wireless now these days. You have to have some basic understanding of how it works and how to troubleshoot it. And that's sort of been the biggest changes I've seen. And now with 3D in-ear monitoring, like Klang is emerging with Digico now to have like a whole 3D in-ear monitoring in the head. That's the latest thing that's coming out that is absolutely fantastic. That is going to be a game changer for sure.
That brings up something. So there is a range when it comes to in-ear monitoring. And we just talked about how important your hearing is. What's your perspective on that? Like, what's your perspective on, because there's, one of the, like, shout out to Texas King, like they're contacting me right now. They're like, hey, we want to buy, in-ears. And lots of people do this. There's some systems that we sell that are, $600 for 4 channels together right now. It kind of starts there. And then it goes all the way up to, $5,000 a channel. What's your perspective and advice for people looking at getting their own in-ear systems from your sort of perspective of this many years now, having worked with them, of the sort of entry-level professional versus mid versus premium? Like, what's your sort of perspective on that?
I mean, I'd suggest to any artist to look at how much touring they're going to be doing, because it's going to be a bigger investment if they're doing more longer touring. If they're going to be doing maybe 20 shows a year, I would say just rent something. You can probably rent a fairly high-end system for cheaper than purchasing it. The other thing with in-ears, as any technology, it's changing so fast. You just buy it, and now there's a new model that's come out that's better, faster, cheaper. So you can always do long-term rentals, I think, sometimes from other people. If the band isn't touring that much, I discourage buying. I would say don't, because it really, to buy the good stuff, which is what I would recommend, like the top tier, is really expensive for most artists,
Yeah.
So I would just say, just try to rent it, if you can, or set up a rent to own, like Long and McQuaid does rent to own, something like that, or Music Shop. Because it can be a big investment to do it correctly, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And also, and you brought this up a bunch of times, frequency coordination, right? Because it's not like, that's something I can guarantee you the bands, the sort of younger, smaller bands that are buying the system to sort of, be more prepared and, have this sort of same mix every night. But are they actually doing frequency coordination properly on all these shows? They probably aren't.
Probably not.
No.
I don't.
And do they even know what that means, right? They can give Deb a call and find out.
Right.
But no, I didn't, again, like, until we started talking about it, I didn't even think about that, because there's quite a few bands that have their own little inner rigs with these X32 racks, and they have this whole thing done up for flying, right? Mm-hmm. And even when I was out, there's a couple of bands I was out on the road with, and we would have some wireless stuff, and we wouldn't necessarily redo those packs in every single, especially if we were like the opening act. Sometimes you don't even have time to really do like a thorough check of things. But that's something that people should check out too, is if you are going to invest in it and you are going to buy it, then you do need to kind of know, especially when you get close to borders and airports, you need to, you definitely need to know what you're doing in terms of frequency coordination, or have someone on your team that can. I wanted to make mention, because I remember at one point I was talking to you about there was a student that you were working with from Fanshawe. Was it Maya? What was her name?
Marissa?
Marissa, that's it. And I just wanted to make mention of the fact that you were sort of having her come out and shadow you, and I just thought that was really, really cool. I find that there's not as many people doing that as there should be. Like some of what you've learned and the sort of the craft of the behind the scenes things, right? Like, it's one thing for artists to shadow other artists, but I don't really see a lot of that happening in live sound, lighting, like monitoring, any of that kind of stuff. It's not really happening as much. It's happening somewhat in the production companies, right? But not so much on like live festivals and sound gigs and stuff, right? So I thought that was really cool of you to sort of do that for her. And how important do you think it is to sort of, bring sort of the next generation up? What's your perspective on that?
I think it's super important, because at some point I'll retire. And, one thing we learned during the pandemic, a lot of experienced live sound engineers left the industry. You know, they couldn't hang on for the pandemic that long. Some of them retired completely. Some of them went and got real jobs, as I like to call them, outside the industry. Some of them went to film. So there is still really now, and I'm sure you're seeing this as a production company, a real labor shortage. There is in live sound and, you know, experienced technicians that know what they're doing, as there is in a lot of trades like carpentry, drywall, you know, electrical. A lot of those skill sets have lost a lot of their key people, right? So it's really important to help the next generation. And I still go back to Fanshawe College usually every year. Paul Jarrett call me to come up and do a guest lecture for their music industry art students. So it's a great way to kind of like, hey, I'm surviving 30 years. I'm still going, you know, to kind of give them some inspiration, hopefully to go forward and show them the work that's involved to get there. So I think it's absolutely important. I wish I could do it more. A lot of times when I'm wearing multiple roles, it's a pretty busy load-in day, especially if there's any kind of curveballs. I don't have as much time to do it. But when I can, I've mentored over people over the years. And I would say it's the best experience. Come and hang out with someone and follow them around for the day and see what it's all about and see if they want to go ahead and pursue it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't, when we're doing shows, sometimes we'll have new crew people out and, you know, and that's usually when I'll try to show people stuff. And, yeah, I think it's really important. And I think that more people out there should do it. More production companies should do it. More, you know, front of house people should do it, because there is a craft to it, right? It's not just, you know, I think kids coming up now think that they can just go to the course at Fanshawe and then they're just going to land the gig and they're going to be great. Like, you know, no, there's a lot that goes into it, right? So I think some real life experience definitely helps, and doing that sort of shadowing thing. Like it happens in the other trades, right? Like, you know, there's apprenticeships and like mentoring and stuff in a lot of the other trades. I think we should do the same thing. I think that we would have more people that can do what we do. That's one of my biggest complaints when people ask me, like, what's your biggest challenge at your business? The people. There's no school, you know, shout out to Fanshawe and OER and Humber and all those schools. They're all great. But they don't fully teach what it is we do on a day-to-day basis on the ground level. They really can't. You know, there's only so much you can do. I mean, you know, speaking of Paul, like me and Paul have talked about that, where like in his, and it's hopefully changing, but, you know, in his particular live course that he does at Fanshawe, he gets 15 hours a year with these students. 15 hours to teach what you and I do? That's crazy talk. You know, Marissa had more experience than that on one gig with you, right? More hours than that, sorry. But yeah, I think it's really important for us to start doing that, and for the students to come out, because that's the other thing. Not all of them will show up either, right? So I think it's important for the other side of it too, for the young people to you know, show up. I had someone applied here the other day for a co-op, and they're like, yeah, so, you know, when I'm done the co-op, like, I'll stay on as a volunteer. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's showing dedication. Wow, that's passion. You know, they really do want to do this. And I'm really interested in those kind of people. I'm like, wow, I'd like to meet this person. I'd like to see what this person's all about. Because like you were in the beginning, right? You love it. You're like, yeah, I really want to do this. So, and those people, as you know, are hard to find. They're very rare. So anytime I kind of see, oh, that's interesting, I try to find those people. What kind of tips do you have for people that are coming up in terms of live sound?
I'd say the first thing is just to get as much experience as you can. In our industry, we call that hands-on faders. So just as much time as you're mixing. And everybody's a critic, you know. It's always when you're listening to somebody else's mix, and especially sound engineers, we're like, oh, there's not enough kick drum, or there's too much kick drum, or oh, we should have done this, I would have done this reverb. But until you're sitting in that hot seat, right, when the show is happening and you're the one making all those decisions, it's a whole different thing. So I always tell people, you just got to get out that experience. And I say you can take courses on it. You can watch some YouTube videos, and then ultimately just start out like at a small folk club like I did. A lot of festivals will take volunteers to mix on small, even children's stages. Just start with a small console, a couple of microphones. Understand the concept of feedback, which is what happens in live. We don't have that in studio. You don't have to worry about feedback, but in live, it's a whole thing. Yeah. You have a really quiet singer, sing 2 feet away from a microphone with a really loud band, you're going to have trouble. You're hearing that vocal. So that's something you have to learn how to navigate. And then even houses of worship, a lot of them will have beautiful sound systems, great consoles, and house of worship artists that you can start to work with and just get as much time learning how to mix. So you can shadow people, follow them around, and then maybe mix a small show with there to help you out in case you have a question or something, starts to feedback and you're not sure what to do. But just do as much as you can and start doing like open mic nights, working in local bars and clubs, shadowing larger production companies on their shows. The more time you can learn. And now because of digital, so many consoles, like I said, have offline editor software. You can research this online. There's YouTube tutorials. Most companies will have a whole series, like Shure has a whole program on the wireless workbench, how to do frequency coordination. They're giving you the information for free. All you have to do is read it and process it and take it in. So the more time you can learn and different types of music, mix metal music, mix punk rock, do folk, classical, jazz, all the different types of music and understand what they need. Because how I mix a symphony with a rock band is different than I mix the rock band on its own. And I mix a jazz band completely different than I mix a metal artist or a punk rock artist or a folk artist. And you've got to be able to understand all those genres.
Does that come from experience, would you say?
I think that, but also just listening to the music, like where is the message? And if you listen to the band's recording from like a jazz record to like a metal record, how does that sound differently? And bringing that out into the live form for sure.
What is it like to mix with a symphony? You've obviously done it. Mm-hmm. What's that like? It's
probably one of the most challenging setups for me as an engineer, because you're trying to take a rock band and then put this symphony, and a symphony traditionally was designed before electronic reinforcement, right? Mm-hmm. So the way I look at it as a electronic engineer is the conductor for the symphony is basically the sound person for the symphony, right?
Right.
And so if he's like, oh, the bass is too loud, he's like, guys, quiet down. I need more French horns. So he's basically kind of mixing them with his hands. And then they're also designed, we microphone now, like for example, a symphony, let me back up a bit. A symphony traditionally may not have any audio reinforcement like we talked about playing at Centennial Hall. But when you have a loud rock band in front of them, now you have to mic the symphony. So we do that by using different types of microphones. Microphone placement is really critical. And some violinists will have spent $50,000 on their Stradivarius violin. They don't want some roadie coming up and sticking a lav mic on it, right? So there's a lot of how that is handled working with the symphony. And we do all of this so that when the symphony plays and it's reinforced electronically, it doesn't sound like we've reinforced it electronically.
Right.
It makes it sound like the sound is just there, like it traditionally is in a symphony is meant to be heard. So that's the toughest part, is to do all of this technology, but then make it sound like the technology is not there.
Yeah.
Really.
No big deal, Deb.
And then the other issue is trying to get the band to hear the symphony as well in their monitors.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right. And so, and some, I've had experience with musicians. They're like, oh, I'm so excited to play with symphony. I want to hear lots of symphony. And I'll put it in their in-ears. They're like, oh, turn it down, because it's too washy. There's too much open mics and distant mics, and it gets hard to hear the tempo and their own normal rock unit that they're used to hearing.
Yeah.
So finding that balance is really good. And traditionally, I did one tour with a symphony where the symphony doesn't want to hear any of the rock band. They don't want to hear it at all. They just follow the conductor. But the lead singer for the band would tell jokes in between. So then the audience was laughing, but the symphony wasn't reacting because they couldn't hear it. So we had to put up side fill and then put the lead vocal mic in between songs so the orchestra could hear the jokes and they would be laughing too.
Oh, jeez.
So even trying to navigate all that is pretty tricky. And normally my favorite situation is we would have a symphony audio engineer that would take like the 60 or 70 channels of the symphony and mix them all down to a submix, what we call stems, of maybe 10 channels. So it'd be first violins, left and right, second violins, horns, brass, woodwinds, percussion, and then send that to me at front of house. So I mix my normal rock band of my 48 inputs or whatever, and then I just add the symphony on and kind of balance the symphony and the rock show together.
Right.
And then those 10 sub mixes or stems would get sent to the monitor tech that is also doing the same thing for the band's in-ears as well. That's the best situation. I have done it where I've mixed the entire symphony plus my band. So you're looking at 80 or 90 inputs. That's a lot to handle.
That's a lot.
It's a lot to handle. And again, you're doing it all so that it just sounds as transparent, as natural as possible, and knowing to mute the channels in between. So if someone's knocking the microphone like I just did, you don't hear that in the PA, especially when it's a condenser microphone. So there's a lot to do the symphony ones, but yeah.
And while we're on sort of this, sort of non-traditional rock band sort of thing, what's it like to sort of mix when there's a broadcasting situation going on? Like, what is that? Do you mix differently when there's broadcast involved?
So I learned a lot about broadcasting actually during the pandemic. It was one of my pivoting things because a lot of artists that were doing shows went to broadcast. And there's people like Livewire, Doug McClement, who's like industry Canadian, highly well respected, and has mixed many Junos and many, many shows over the years. And he's sort of my hero, really, for broadcast mixing. And so I chatted with him for a little bit, and I got to mix Dan Hill, one of my artists at the Elmo Combo. And rather than doing live, I said to Doug, I really want to try mixing the broadcast mix because it's a different world than live. And so it was with his supervision, and he was kind enough and grateful enough to let me do that on the SSL console they had at the Elmo Combo. So it's a really different world for me because, first of all, you're mixing on a small set of near fields or headphones, and I'm used to a big rock PA. Right. So it's a really different world, and the reverbs are different. And so it was really, it's a very specialized niche that I don't do that well, but I certainly learned. And usually what I recommend when I am doing broadcast mixing is that you have a separate console that is not in the same room as where the broadcast concert is happening, with separate speakers, and they're completely isolated. So they're mixing themselves. If you're mixing in the room, with live, a lot of times we're mixing to what we're hearing from stage volume and in the hall and adding on where it's needed. Whereas broadcast, you need to put everything in because the listener is obviously in the room. So I've had some situations where I'm trying to do a headphone mix to a broadcast mix as I'm mixing live, and it's never as good for sure. I always recommend you have a separate broadcast console in an isolated room. Just doing the broadcast mix is the best way to go.
How was the El Mama Combo? How was that?
It was fantastic. They poured so much money into the renovations. It's a great sounding room. They did a great job at it.
Yeah, I had Andre, who was one of the guy who built Charterhouse here, the studio after Dan. He was on the podcast, and we talked a bit about it, but I haven't physically been there yet. I want to go check it out. It looks really cool. Well, that's cool. What does the future look like, I was going to say for sound technicians and stuff coming up, but I'd say for both, like artists too. Like, what's your perspective on sort of what the future looks like in terms of, because, when I first walked in, I said, how you doing? You're like, yep, still real busy. So what does the future sort of look like moving forward in your perspective for artists and for technicians as well? And should we be hopeful, or is it, all doom and gloom, or what?
I think the big thing for artists has really changed with the record companies. It used to be that, and again, back in my lineage, it was kind of the end of the heydays of record companies where bands toured in order to make money off their album sales. And then when streaming came in, the record companies had less clout, and it really flipped into artists became making predominantly their money from touring. And that's still the case. Like, if you look at the peanuts that artists get paid on Spotify or iTunes, it's tragic from what you and I grew up knowing that artists would get paid on album sales. So more and more artists now need to tour as that becomes their viable revenue stream because they're not making it off the album sales. So I think, and we learned during the pandemic how many people missed concerts and missed live sound, and you could see the success of 2022. So many shows were happening and so many fans were happy to be out and watching their favorite performers. So I think there'll always be a market for that moment, that one moment in time when your favorite artist is playing in your town and you get to go and see them. There's nothing can ever recreate that. And we've learned that during the pandemic. There is no pod stream or concert stream that I watched that had the same energy as in that same room, for sure, no matter how we tried to recreate it. So I think artists are, I think what's happening as of right now in 2024 is that the cost of touring has increased significantly in the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
The cost to rent a tour bus right now is affecting the production budget for sound and lighting equipment. Just to get the artists from A to B. Flights have got more expensive. Anybody who's traveled recently, hotels are more expensive. And these are all part of how the artist travels around and gets from A to B. So that is what I'm really seeing. And when we came out of the pandemic and we were so busy, I never anticipated that is the cost. And I've talked to other sound engineers and they're saying the same thing. A lot of artists are not touring as much right now because it's just so costly, or looking at some other cost-cutting measures. So I think, and I was talking to somebody else about this recently, there's the Taylor Swifts of the world that are doing great. Their shows are expensive to run, but they're making a lot of money. People who are maybe a solo folk artist that has like an acoustic guitar they throw in their car and they go to a local pub, use the local sound, don't have a sound engineer, aren't carrying any crew, kind of advance the show themselves, they're probably doing okay. They're not making a lot of money, but they're not spending a lot of money. But where we're seeing the struggle right now is mid-level artists that are having some kind of radio success, want to have some kind of production with their show, whether it's lighting or video or set or something, and carry a small crew. But they're really just, the cost to really do it well is becoming really challenging for a lot of artists. We need to support our artists more, whether it's grants or the other thing the artists could do is increase their ticket prices, but most artists don't want to do that. They don't want to isolate their fans. They want to make their shows accessible. So where things go from a year from now for artists, I don't know. We're going to start to look at other areas of whether it's sponsorship or branding to like create part of an industry. And in terms of young people, I hope there's a new generation of people that are going to come out and work hard and take it on, and that have that fire and that drive and that spark. And every time I'm at Fanshawe, I tell students, we need you right now. There is never a better time.
Absolutely.
I said, what took me 6 years of relentless touring and like starving and really not making a decent living to get to a place where I could make a living and be happy and comfortable, they could probably do in 6 months or a year. And we're seeing large tours go out with people that are very inexperienced. I was at a production company recently, and they're like, we're so strapped for labor. We're sending out crew that we know aren't qualified, but they're available. That's all we have right now. So the labor shortage is there. So while it's difficult for us right now, it's creating opportunity for the new generation. Like, just step up. And we will take you. We need you.
And even if you're not a sound or lighting person, I mean, we need guitar techs. We need drum techs. We need, so if you know how to tune a guitar and, really, really well, and you know how to, do that, then shadow, come out and ask to shadow some of our guys. Like I got 3 guitar techs here full time, setting up guitars that we ship all over the country every day. Which also blows my mind that people buy guitars on the internet, but thank goodness for that. Pandemic pushed them into that too. Pandemic did a lot of positive things, lots of negative, but there was some positives. But yeah, it's, people don't think about that either as a career path, right? But that's super important. Like, I remember when we worked with Bon Jovi, and the entire back of the stage was guitars. Like there was literally a couple hundred guitars, I think, back there. I don't know exactly how many there was, but it was substantial. And somebody's got to tune all those guitars in case they want to play that one song that one guitar is for. That ain't, those guitars ain't getting tuned by you, and they're not getting tuned by the lighting guy, and they're not getting tuned by the tour manager. Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of, places, I think, for young people to sort of jump into. And that was exposed for sure post-pandemic, because everybody did want to go back out on the road all at the same time, which previous to that kind of worked because you were sort of sharing crew sometimes with other bands. So you'd have different schedules. But then when everybody wanted to go back all at the same time, it was like, well, okay, well, who's paying me more? Or whatever, whatever the scenario was. But that exposed a lot at that moment. I remember because Bungie does Cochrane, he does the ladies, he does, but the ladies had him on retainer. So got to go. But, I've talked to a number of people that was a thing where, I got to find a tech for my show. We're growing out. I need a front of house person. I need tour manager. I need. And you're right. Like the need is there right now. So finish school, and then come shadow, and then get on the road.
It sounds like you guys should have a PA shop school.
Well, I don't know about
PA shop out here.
I don't know about that. I have a hard enough time teaching a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. All right, I'll work on that first. What's the thing that you're most proud of in life?
I would say the thing I'm most proud of has nothing to do with the music industry at all. I was a mentor for Big Brother, Big Sister Youth Services.
Oh, wow.
And I met my little sister, Leah, and I mentored her from when she was 10 to when she was 18, which is when the program ends. But we stayed friends. And I consider her my best friend,
wow.
and she was a maid of honor at my wedding day, and I was a maid of honor at her wedding day. And it's the thing I'm most proud of my whole life is to give back to the community and help change the course of one person's life from maybe derailing into like hopefully a beautiful path. She was the first child in her, I think, a couple generations of her family to go to post-secondary school and graduate. And I was there the day she walked across the stage as a college graduate. So I'm really proud of her. And that's the thing I'm most proud of.
Cool. Well, thanks for having all this love for our business. And thanks for sharing that love with us here today and throughout your entire 30-year journey. I think it's pretty epic. And
well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for everything that you've done and everything you will do.
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm glad you've got so many guest speakers, and it's a great thing to put out for people to learn and to listen and hopefully get inspired as well. So thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show. Ryan here from Music City Live. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for watching Music City Live. If you liked this episode, like the video. And for more clips and episodes, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to join the conversation by commenting below and visit us at musiccityliveshow.com.